God I was wearing this. Never expose yourself to toxic levels of cringe without proper protection. And I'm not going to justify that line with a response. No, I'm not. I'm just not. But honestly, rain is going to make them drown? If I couldn't swim, would I be afraid of going outside when it rained for fear of it filling up the world and drowning me? What the fuck are we talking? The gang realizes that in the same location that Mark's ship has apparently landed, there's a sacred place called Kalima. What's on point on the other side of that hill?
Where the Almighty breathed life into Simos, the first ape.
They're not allowed to go, so they go. The gang reaches Kalima, and I don't know if I want to say you should have guessed it, because I didn't. But I was a primordial little dumbass when I saw this movie for the first time. So you should have guessed it. Kalima is actually Mark's ship, the Oberon. It crashed there 2,000 years prior.
They're all dead because they were all looking for me.
And Kalima comes from a sign that reads, "Caution live animals." Yes, it does. Anyway, so it turns out that Simos was one of the chimps aboard the Oberon and also a secret asshole who rose up against the humans. The gang battles Thade's oncoming army by tricking them into not knowing what an engine is. God damn, that's a lot of air apes.
Wait.
Oh fuck! Those apes are alive! So really? There was no point to that? Well, alright. How are we gonna get out of this then? Pericles! No, he lives.
You're okay. Came home.
Thade's men learn that humans aren't dumb and turn on him.
Everything I have believed is a lie.
Everything's good.
I have to leave now.
You know, one day they'll tell a story.
Now, Mark, she may be a filthy animal, but she is female, so you should probably make out with her. And she's a female as well, and despite the fact that she just saw you make out with her, and she will be able to see if you make out with her, you should probably make out with her. Director Mark Wahlberg, everyone. So Mark commits Grand Theft Auto 5 on poor Pericles, and he's off. Time ticks back down, and he... Why can this bitch not land one ship? Mark. Monkey. Mark. Monkey. And now, we get atop the original twist. Over here we've got American landmark, nihilistic implications about the world and who we are as human beings. Thade is Abe Lincoln. Cut to credits. Now, apparently they planned on going into this further in the sequel. This? Oh, you didn't do that. This?
I beg your pardon, Dr. Sayers.
You're going too far, Professor Zira.
So what sequel you did? Oh, you didn't do one. How come? Oh. So instead we're left with this bad taste in our mouths for literally ever. So I guess the implication is that Thade de-swamped Mark's original pod and fixed it because he's techie. Or no, I guess he just used ape magic again. Then flew it back in time, happened to land earlier than Mark, and somehow took over the planet.
Did you have a conclusion for any of that?
No. ultimately, it's a fun movie with some silly nonsense in it. On a technical level, I think it really deserves recognition. The prosthetics are incredible. The sets are awesome. And they really pulled out the stops from the wire work as well. I also like Danny Elfman's main score here. Well, that's that, and we're on to fake apes, which are more fake than these apes, but less fake than these apes. What do you mean it didn't make sense? Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Home stretch. Now, what'll start to become clear is that these next three movies are essentially remakes, not of the original movie, but no, just of the sequels, 4 and 5 specifically. So what is a remake of a sequel? It's a remake. Duh. So much like Armando in 4, in this version, Daddy Franco raises Caesar without anyone knowing that his brain has folds. This all starts when Will develops a virus that's meant to cure Alzheimer's, but ultimately kills you, LOL. More on that later. But it also accidentally levels up the ape's intelligence and doesn't kill them also. As Will develops the virus, he manages to cure his father with it. Meanwhile, he raises Caesar as a side project. I really enjoy the progression of Caesar's character in this one because when the movie starts out, he's really just an ape who's unusually clever. But as we get to the end of the movie, Caesar completely takes over as the main character. Caesar reacts emotionally in public, which draws unwanted attention to himself.
What are you doing? Stay right there. You are going nowhere. You are something to live. I chose out my boy. This is your problem. You made them.
This is just one of many great scenes in this movie. Will has to put Caesar in a shelter, and then the real plot begins. And much like it did in Conquest,
Bastard!
this results in Caesar and his father figure having to be separated.
Not right now.
Not going home right now.
Let's go back to the circus.
No.
Oh, please. No, that's the first place they look.
Caesar witnesses the cruelty of humans firsthand. And then begins plotting his ape uprising. Caesar meets his soon-to-be longtime friend Maurice, the photorealistic orangutan. Seriously, what the fuck? This was 12 years ago. Meanwhile, Will rushes the production of the cure in order to save his father.
I've already developed a virus strain that I think will be more aggressive.
So our hero Will, despite his many qualities, does kind of murder every living person on the planet. So Granddaddy's symptoms return.
Caesar, eat your food.
And he eventually dies. Which clues Will in that this thing they've been calling a virus might be a virus.
It's a virus. We don't know the human-related effects.
Will warns his boss Jacobs, who gives the minusculest of fucks, to the point that one could almost argue its non-existence. And he continues production anyway. We're also introduced to Koba, who will be important going forward. Caesar straight up steals the smart juice and shares it with his friends. And then the big moment.
Take your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape! Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape! Take your stinking hands off me, you damn dirty human!
And then the handler gets Avada Kedavra. With the gang engaging in a little light revolution after. So like I said before, this movie does way better with the ape intelligence thing, with Caesar undumbing the other apes. But the one issue that remains here is that Maurice was always able to communicate like a human, even from the first day that they met. And he was normal AF. even before he gets brain bettered. And yet, I know that apes can learn sign language, but this is not really this.
Dim's longest recorded sentence was, "Give orange me, give eat orange me, eat orange, give me
The
eat."
apes ultimately escaped to live a life of freedom in Muir Woods. Lovely place, actually. I visited when I went to San Francisco, and I didn't even get mauled by apes twice. This movie's really tough for me. It's fighting for my number one of all the 9 movies. I think this movie really benefits from like a wide variety of thingies. Here are some of them. You got daddy drama, you got science gone wrong, you got coming of age stuff, and you got a nice emotional resolution at the end.
Please come home.
Caesar is home.
And one last thing. This is clearly referencing the astronauts in Planet of the Apes 1, and seems to be just a throwaway. But I would love it if they bring the astronauts back in Kingdom, because then it could be a completely fresh exploration of that original concept, but this time from the apes' perspective. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Much like in number 5, Battle of the Apes, Caesar rules over a community of apes in a world where humans are all but extinct. Look at that. So Malcolm and his crew come head to head with Caesar's tribe because this guy shoots an ape who happens to be friends with Caesar's son, Blue Eyes. 75 guesses as to what this guy's name is, and the first 75 don't count. His name's Fuckwit, so after Fuckwit shoots Ash, Koba here tries to convince Caesar that they need to fight back. This sets into motion what could be a badass war, but instead is a badass peace.
Apes! To blood! What war? What will fight? If we must.
So that could have been that. Except the humans need access to this power plant dam thingy, whatever, that's near where the apes live. But
Do not come back.
so despite Caesar's demands, Malcolm risks it all and travels to Caesarton in this harrowing ass scene. I love that he's like 200% sure he's gonna die right now, but he just braves it. They really nail the human characters in these movies every time, which is impressive because human characters never carry over to the next movie. So they have to develop them from scratch every time.
I didn't know you had a daughter.
So the apes and humans clash, obviously. Koba is this film's Fuckwit Ape Edition. He just can't let it go. But Malcolm, Ellie, and Alexander continue to grow closer to Caesar and the other apes.
Lies.
Koba shoots Caesar, but nobody witnesses it, thus framing the humans for it. Which leads to one of the most badass moments in film history. Keep in mind, Maurice has never spoken in the series until... Koba then stages a coup and imprisons anyone who was loyal to Caesar. Meanwhile, the apes take over the human city under Koba's command. Blue Eyes and Ash go to Koba and are sort of like, maybe not? Koba straight up murders Ash. Oh, you're a real piece of shit. But don't worry, because that bitch is gonna get as good as he gives. Now, while Caesar recovers with the humans at the old Franco house, Blue Eyes breaks the other good apes out of bus jail, and it's time to kick some ass.
Kill. Ape. You are not ape.
Aldo wasn't human. Was he, Caesar?
But the apes have to move on because dumbasses over here told on them.
Make contact. They're already on their way.
If you don't go, it'll be all out war.
war has already begun.
War for the Planet of the Apes. So Caesar's crew has been on the run ever since.
People are coming, soldiers.
And boy do they. In the intro sequence, human soldiers fight against Caesar and the apes. These soldiers work for the Colonel, the you-know-what of the film. The group calls themselves Alpha Omega.
Alpha and Omega.
They even have apes on their side, which they call donkeys. This dude Preacher seems kind of sympathetic. I wonder if he'll become a good guy. Caesar wins and lets these dorks go, but the donkey named Red escapes. Our heroes question whether someone may have helped him. It wasn't the albino one. He did do it, though. Back at their temporary home, you know what? Not much point talking about it, because... Remember how Caesar had a wife? Dead. Remember how Caesar had a son? Dead. But he does have a brand new little Cornelius, who does not die, unlike Pericles.
He doesn't die.
He didn't die! The fuck are you talking about? So Caesar takes his best mates to go break those motherfuckers in half, and he sends the rest of the apes to go find something called the Oasis. Spoiler alert, not gonna happen. And on this note, we start to see how war continues to retell certain events from battle. So the way I see it, Rise covers the events of conquest, and Dawn and War together cover the events of battle. So along the way, the gang meet up with a girl named Nova, and it's best not to think about it. They decide to take her along because she's an orphan. No, that's not right. Oh, her name's not Nova yet. They name her Nova because she's an orphan with no name. That's not right either. They name her Nova because she's an orphan because they orphaned her. She doesn't mind though. Nova can't talk, which we'll later find out is the result of a new strain of the virus. So the gang finds Winter, who sold them out to the Colonel and let Red go after the intro battle.
My son. My wife are dead.
It's just insane to me that the emotion that's possible with these characters, it rivals, if not surpasses, what was possible with live action apes. And these are cartoons. Winter tells them where the Colonel's base is and they make their way there. A small little human steals one of their horses and they chase him down. Turns out to be an adorable miniature version of Steve Zahn.
Bad. Ape.
Well, they get into a scrape. Luca dies, and Caesar's captured by the Colonel's men. Caesar's held captive, and we discover that the rest of the tribe was also captured. The apes are forced to help build a wall. Because another militia group is coming, and they don't much like the Colonel. Wonder why that is. The Colonel invites Caesar in for tea and reveals that he killed his own men and even his own son when he learned that they had developed the silent treatment.
The virus suddenly changed. Mutated.
Oh,
Mutated.
you mean... No, okay, not the same. Meanwhile, Preacher continues to be a bad guy.
You kill your own men.
What proceeds to play out is essentially a heist movie in which our characters have to work together to rescue the apes. Some from outside the prison and some from within. All with this ticking clock factor that is the oncoming outside militia. The deal there is that even the other humans know that the Colonel's a fuckwit, but they're not just gonna kill the humans, they're gonna kill the apes as well. So we gotta get the fuck out of Dodge. More on that later. And of course, Preacher continues to be a, you know. So Caesar's arc finally begins to resolve when he realizes that he let his hate endanger his tribe just like the Colonel did. The apes finally escape, but Caesar's got one last bitch to boil. As it turns out, the Colonel's contracted the Shut Up from Nova's Doll. Caesar gets...
The fuck out of here! Look, we're all dead! Grenade launcher!
And would you look-see here? A bad guy approaches. What did I tell you? I saw this movie, that happened so quickly that I didn't really appreciate it. But now on rewatching it, I have so much respect for this. That is one of the best subversions of a trope I've ever seen. No, still no. The reason this works, Rye, is because our expectations for Preacher are replaced with something better. The twist is that we've actually been building towards Red's redemption, not Preacher's. And well, the other humans attack, but they get absolutely wrecked by this avalanche that Caesar caused. And the apes survive by doing what they do. And that's about it. Happy ending. What, he dies? That's alright. When I first saw War in the theaters, I remember feeling like the whole thing felt a little samey and like a misery marathon. But watching it again, I realized that there's actually a lot of really fun moments despite the dire situation. And while Rise had a lot of variation in the visuals and locations, this one I feel like makes up for it in interesting character interactions. And in this version, Caesar's young son does die, just like in 5. But unlike in 5, Cornelius is the one who survives. This is a really nice touch because just like how 5 ended with the hope of creating a better future, this film ends bittersweet, but with the added hopefulness of Cornelius living and perhaps being able to grow up to be like the original. And so that's about it. What, I have to rank them too? Shitty damn ass, titty ass. Time for me to rank the films, something I've been contractually looking forward to. Number 9, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. While it has its moments, it retreads a lot of the plot of 1 and that ending. My God. Number 8, Mark of the Apes. Fun and stupid. Number 7, Planet of the Apes 1. A classic with a great twist, but honestly not as interesting as most of the sequels for me personally. Purely subjective. Don't cry. Number 6, Conquest of the Apes. For good chemistry between Caesar, McDonald, and Breck, as well as a fun build-up to the revolution. It loses points for technical issues like the sound and last-minute editing of the ending, despite it being a wise choice in my opinion. Number 5, Battle for the Apes, for the interesting setup and moral dilemmas and some good action sequences. Number 4, Escape from the Apes, for good characters, time travel, and ape-out-of-water fun. Number 3, War for the Apes, for the dynamic cast of great moments and stunning visuals. Number 2, Rise of the Apes, for the eclectic locales, interesting family dynamics, and intriguing sci-fi premise. And at number 1, Dawn of the Apes, for the likable characters and gripping story. It's extremely hard to pick between the 3 remakeables because I think they're more or less equal but for different reasons. But I'm giving it to Dawn because I think it's the most consistently good out of all 3. I also didn't go into this planning on simping for the remakeables. I am a big fan of the originals, but I think we just lucked out that we got a reboot series of just 3 absolute bangers. Share your rankings with us in the comments and let us know what you think of Kingdom if you see it. Planet of the Apes started out as a Cold War commentary, but it's survived through so many decades that it seemed fit to actually change its message along the way. Mutate, if you will. Mark of the Apes decided to drop the Cold War message altogether and instead just told its own story while retaining select elements from the original. While the remakeables created an entirely new explanation for how the Planet of the Apes started and what the catalyst was. I think it's cool that we got to explore this idea with various different technologies as well. In the original series, the ape prosthetics are impressive for the time, but the apes are clearly human-shaped. In Mark Wahlberg, we get to see the same prosthetics approach, but instead of a $5 million budget, it's a $100 million budget, as well as with 30 years of advancement in the art. And then we have the modern remakeables, which use entirely CG apes. And among other things, one of the benefits is that the apes can, look like the apes that they are. And I can't even, I can't even, are fucking, is that real? What is happening to me? He's fucking photoreal. Rise even, and it's 12 years old.
You're obsessing, dude.
I know, but it's in there, and it can't get out. So if the original sequels are sprequels, and the reboots are remakequels, what is Kingdom? It's not just a sequel. It's a sequel to a remake of a sequel that's also a prequel. It's a sprequel. So what's the thesis of this video? I don't know. But what's the thesis of Planet of the Apes? I mean, it started out as one thing and ended up another. See, I told you I was gonna bullshit it. But what I do find interesting is that it is kind of one of a kind. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen examples of what I call sprequels and remakequels. But don't let me have all the fun. If you find other examples, let me know. Have you ever thought to yourself, gosh, I wish I had my own cringeometer? Well, you can. Head over to patreon.com/nostalgiac and subscribe to the top tier, and you'll receive your very own one of these sexy puppies. Dreams do come true. You'll also get all the benefits of the other tiers, including a custom 1-minute review of your choosing. And if you join any of the tiers, you can enjoy a special video of me playing F*** Marry Kill with all the characters from the series. Apes only. Did I sign something? Before we get the hell out of here to go decimate a bowl of Captain Crunch, I just want to say a big thank you to my top tier patrons, Cassian, Juanita, and Simon Kaser. Your support means the world to me. Cheers. Wait, hold on a second. McDonald and McDonald are two different people? For years, I thought they just recast him, and then not until editing this video did I finally notice this.
When my brother was coming to Briggs' assistant, he told me about them. My brother.
I did always think that the recasting was a little awkward, but now I'm kind of pissed. I mean, I'd kind of gotten invested in McDonald's overall arc that I thought spanned these two movies. Whatever.
Who knows?
Tenet! Fuck! You may feel like
releasing it with their own copyright in order to pretend they had actually created it. This result.
Get your engagement ring at JamesAllen.com, because when she looks at that ring, she's gonna see you.
Welcome back, guys, to another idea. So here we are. So after 16 films. Hey everyone, welcome to another Iceberg. Today, I'll be finishing up the DC Trinity.
Alright folks, today I'm here to bring you my thoughts on the finale of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol. Now, it's been no secret this season hasn't really blown my socks off story-wise, and unfortunately for me, the finale pretty much followed that trend for the most part. I've gone pretty in-depth with my grievances over the last few reviews, so I'll try to keep my points short, but this episode had some pretty strange writing choices at times in my opinion. However, that doesn't necessarily mean I thought it was outright bad. As I've mentioned in pretty much every review for this series, the set design is just on another level. Whoever is responsible for this needs to be in charge of every spin-off's apocalyptic look. 10 out of 10, beautiful and creative. I feel like I put a lot more stock into the design and cinematography of these shows than most, so despite my various issues with the story, I would never say it's terrible for those reasons alone. But let's just jump into the episode's plot. Now, before the season came out, I saw a ton of people annoyed that it was going to feature a musical sequence with Daryl singing, but in my opinion, the way it was executed was actually really great and endearing. I heard Daryl wasn't originally supposed to sing here. Instead, it was supposed to only be Laurent, but the actor was nervous, so Norman Reedus joined in, which is a nice story, but I find weird considering how well the scene works with the two doing it together. You can't always get what you want. Opening the finale and closing it feels like it's speaking to me directly, which I found pretty funny, but is also speaking to the characters. They want to go home together, but sometimes life doesn't work out the way you thought it would. And given the plane can only hold 3 people, it fits really well in my opinion. But speaking of the plane, I've got to admit, now that we've seen the full outcome, Carol's lie to Ash really feels like it didn't have any major consequences. I do like the whole you could still save a kid perspective Daryl gives him, but the way it was set up really made it seem like Ash was gonna purposefully leave them behind out of anger or something like that. Carol was on a lying spree this season, so it would have been nice to see those lies actually catch up to her. But this way, Ash does stay a likable character, so I get what they were going for. However, something I love, this season is full of potential environmental storytelling videos. While making their way out to Daryl and company, Falou, Cadron, and the rest of their crew stop at what's said to have once been a mental institution converted into a hospital complex. And inside, the reanimated bodies of the patients still remain where they died all those years ago. This place looks amazing, and you already know I'm going to be making a video on it in the next couple weeks. However, while looting the chateau, the group would be ambushed by the Pauvre remnants who reveal Janae 2 is still searching for Laurent to fulfill the prophecy. And despite fighting them off, a few do get away. I said it last review, but I'll say it again. Killing both Janae and Losang before the finale just to introduce another character to fill that void is really weird. She's a straight up replacement for what they needed in this episode, and for that, she gets the title of Janae 2. Although, at least Janae was actually intimidating. This lady just isn't, in my opinion. She ambushes Anna while trying to get Laurent's location, but ends up having to strike a deal to give her the plane in exchange. Not very assertive, if you ask me. However, surprisingly, what's left of Pauvre, along with Anna, arrive at the abandoned stadium the very next scene, which I do appreciate them getting the show on the road. But while making their way through the ruins, Anna reveals it was always her plan to lead them into an acid walker ambush. And just as quick as she's introduced, Janae 2 is bit on the arm as she makes it out the gate. Which, whatever. But as Anna tries to escape right behind them, she's locked on the other side and fed to the walkers. Now, I do like Anna's death in the context of the story. She ended up sacrificing her life for the safety of the boy, despite that not being her intentions going in. But the actual execution was kinda weird. I do not like when characters are getting ripped apart and act like it's not a big deal. It's nowhere near as bad as it was in that one scene during Fear Season 8, but imagine getting torn apart by human teeth. There's no way you wouldn't be screaming your head off. But as Falou, Cadron, and the rest arrive to see their friends off, Pauvre crashes the party and begins to fire at the plane. And I gotta say, right here is why Cadron has become such a badass character. He's literally injured, wielding an automatic rifle in one hand, and doing way more damage than all the other Guerriers combined. I know there's been a lot of love online for Cadron, and I fully get it, which is what makes his ending this episode even more frustrating, but we'll get there. However, during the firefight, Daryl volunteers to stay back and fight off Pauvre while Ash, Carol, and Laurent begin to take off. And just as it looks like they aren't gonna make it off the ground, a shot is fired, taking out the pursuing Guerriers by Carol, who stayed behind to assure Laurent and Ash's safety as they take off towards the Commonwealth in America. Obviously, Carol was going to be staying behind as well, and to my delight, I didn't find the reasoning contrived. The scene was tense and well executed. As mentioned, I would have preferred Ash leave them all behind as an FU for Carol's lie, but seeing everybody smile as they take off was actually pretty heartwarming. And to be honest, I'm kinda just glad he made it out of this season alive. However, after realizing her failure, Janae 2 takes her own life right then and there, which, again, whatever. But I think it's safe to assume Pauvre will officially collapse now, given literally everyone of note is dead. And with that, all major threats in France have now been handled, for better or for worse, as our survivors gather at a location acting as a meeting spot for two Scottish guides, who will take them all the way to England through the Eurochannel tunnel in search of a boat back to America, which obviously isn't Spain, which is a bit strange. So for the love of God, please give Season 3 more episodes if you're going to be jumping from place to place. But during some downtime that night before taking off, we get a couple scenes of note where Falou gets together with the newly introduced Alika, which will actually be important shortly, but we also get to see Daryl finally get his chance to tell Cadron he didn't kill his brother. Which, man, just the fact Cadron came to peace with Daryl fully believing he was responsible really does speak to how interesting his character is. But in some of our final gorgeous wide shots of post-apocalyptic France, our survivors finally arrive at the tunnel's entrance, which is said to be a 9-hour walk through to England. But as they all say goodbye to Alika, who wishes to stay behind in Paris, Falou announces he won't be going either as he has found something worth staying for. Which, again, it is annoying they are clearing house with all the interesting characters in France to make room for the new cast next season, but at least he didn't die and gets a happy ending. This I'm more so okay with. Now, as our remaining 5 survivors enter the tunnel, Daryl asks the guides what England's like, where we get quite the shocking revelation if true. Allegedly, England survived the outbreak with the army succeeding in locking everything down. We'll come to see some evidence shortly that may go against that still being the case, but if what they said is true, that is a major revelation for the Walking Dead universe. Like, holy shit, a country could have possibly survived the initial outbreak? That is actually insane and exactly the kind of lore drop I like to hear, even if they had fallen in the years since. It's really tough to say if this is a fact, but given the group comes across a fallen military checkpoint deep within the tunnel, there could be some merit to their words. However, here we get what's probably my favorite set in the whole series, as on the other side of said military gate lies a camp with still functioning generators, surrounded by some strange bioluminescent substance that caused its soldiers to lose their minds from the fumes. And my god, are these visuals cool. I'm always a fan of walkers consumed by their environment, so these things were awesome to see on screen. But as awesome as the set piece is, I'm rarely a fan of hallucinations in The Walking Dead. I found the environmental story left behind really intriguing, but to spend the last 20 minutes within France watching our characters trip out felt like a bit of a strange choice writing-wise for the grand finale. I think Cadron turning on Daryl after losing his mind from the fumes was interesting, until he ran off into the darkness, never to be seen for the rest of the episode. As mentioned, despite not minding Falou's exit, it felt like more of an excuse to clear out the cast given this Alika character was just introduced. But Cadron just running away from the story is hilariously bad if this is the last time we see him. I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say we'll see Cadron again in Season 3, but to be honest, I also wouldn't be shocked if we didn't. Now, to end out the finale, Carol hallucinates seeing Sophia, and as previously stated, although I don't really care for these types of visions in the show, I did like how the writers explored whether or not she wants to continue on in this world given everything she's lost. I just preferred the more subtle way of showing her grief through the flashes in the previous episodes that brought her back to that time momentarily, rather than her outright expressing her feelings to a full-on hallucinated apparition. At least for Carol, these are wounds that have been dealt with a long time ago that are simply resurfacing. But in Daryl and Isabel's case, her death feels too fresh for this not to feel like a last-minute effort to give a sense of closure, in my opinion. If you needed a drug-induced hallucination 2 episodes after her death to achieve that, maybe you killed her off a bit too early, but what do I know? However, as the 2 Scottish guides attempt to leave the rest for dead as they take the last 2 remaining gas masks, Daryl gathers the strength inspired by fake Isabel to fight back and take them out. And after finding Carol in her fragile state, the 2 don the mask before heading down the remaining stretch of tunnel. As you can't always get what you want, closes us out.
Looking for a better way to TV? Well, meet Philo. Philo's the best of live TV. Wow. And premium channels. And free channels.
Feels like a dream come true.
And a gigantic library of blockbuster movies and shows that you can watch now or save for up to a year. All of this in one place. All for just $28 a month. That's Philo, baby. Try free at philo.tv. Bye-bye.
Now, I hope my pros and cons regarding this specific episode were balanced out properly in this video. As stated 1,000 times, the production value of the series was great, the concepts were intriguing, and the characters were genuinely gripping. But I feel most of the plot lines proposed over the last 12 episodes just didn't have enough time to develop. We were given the concept of a child who could be immune, but didn't get to see if there was any validity to these claims. Laurent's possible immunity had triggered wars, so I highly doubt Daryl or Carol would ever reveal this information to anybody once back home. So I have to assume it'll be many years, if ever, before this question comes back up. Although maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised and this plot point will resurface in season 3, but I highly doubt it. We got the potential of a country overcoming the dead through aggressively engineered walker variants. One of the coolest concepts to come out of this franchise in years. But we get no explanation on how that could have possibly worked or how it could have been discovered before witnessing the collapse of that very organization altogether. And I promise, this is the last time I'm going to talk about it. I know it's getting annoying, but I have to just say it for my final thoughts. We were teased of great revelations regarding the beginning of the outbreak, the virus itself, mysterious shadow government teams, and naturally running walker variants in the World Beyond post-credit scene taking place within France, and didn't get any follow-up on any of these mystery box plot points while we were in that very location. I don't feel I'm stepping out of line being disappointed in the lack of answers regarding all these really cool concepts. I can't imagine we're going to be going back to France anytime soon, so I unfortunately believe these questions and possibilities are going to remain unexplored for quite some time. But with that being said, I think I'm going to give this specific episode a 6 out of 10. It's kind of hard to put a rating on these episodes, but for me, the bulk of the score comes from the production value and characters, with most of the lost points coming from the strange writing choices or general direction in story. I will say though, the teaser for season 3 does look really interesting. I love the tone they're going for, and I do think the idea of having them go on a country hopping road trip could be executed really well. But a part of me will always be a little disappointed we only spent 12 episodes in France. I'm sure elements of this series will come up in future videos, but as of right now, these have been my raw thoughts on Daryl Dixon Season 2. I'm excited to hear what you thought about this finale and the season as a whole in the comments down below. And remember, if you ended up loving it, that's totally okay. My words are not gospel. But that's gonna do it for me today, folks. As always, thank you so much for watching.
Who are you?
Negan.
Who are you? Negan. Who are you?
I'm Prison Mike!
Season 7 of The Walking Dead was a huge turning point, both in the characters' lives and the audience's lives. It saw a massive drop-off in viewers, it saw a lot of viewers lose faith in the show, even if they kept watching it, and it turned hardcore fans of the show, who once watched religiously every week, into casual fans by the end of it, myself included. Now, a big argument with this season is how most shows that go on this long reach a peak and then drop off. So is season 7 a result of the show hitting its peak and casually falling off in viewership, or is it the result of something worse? Today we go over the premiere episode, the snail's pace that season 7 introduced, and the introduction to the all-out war arc in the comics. We're also going to be going over why I believe season 7 of The Walking Dead is by far the worst season of the show. So hand over your weapons, look out for that CGI deer, and let's talk The Walking Dead Season 7. So whenever I talk about this opening episode and subsequently the season 6 finale, I see a lot of people now who look back fondly on the cliffhanger, saying, oh, it was really great, it made people want to watch the next episode. Yeah, that was never the problem. The show always made you want to watch the next episode, whether there was a cliffhanger or not, but this new wave of Walking Dead fans over the last years who watch the show on Netflix and think of the season finale of season 6 and the season 7 opener as a wonderful two-parter. But the thing is, this wasn't a two-parter. Sure, it feels that way because it's seemingly written as a two-parter, but those of us who watched the show as it came out did not get to just click next episode. The season 6 finale gets a very bad rap because of the cliffhanger, and if you look at all the reviews, all the recent ones say, oh, it's a great episode with a great cliffhanger, but all the older fans, like myself, are still very hurt by this cliffhanger. And I will always defend my stance that this is a bad cliffhanger. Call me bitter or salty or whatever, but this cliffhanger absolutely killed the show when it first came out and made fans lose faith in the show. Pair this with some other questionable things in season 6, like the Glenn fake-out death, the pacing breakup with Morgan's episode, Daryl getting shot in the episode before this and making us think he was going to be really hurt just for it to mean absolutely nothing. I mean, he literally never gets any on-screen help for this bullet wound. It just kind of disappears. There were a lot of moments of fabricated stakes or suspense, and the cliffhanger was the worst example of that. The moment the ratings dipped even the slightest in season 6, they wanted to do something to try and get a bunch of new audience members to watch, and I'll hand it to them. Their gimmick worked. For one episode. The season 7 premiere is the second highest viewed episode in the entire show. Why? Because people wanted to see who Negan killed, but once that question was answered, any new viewers the show was trying to pick up didn't go past this point because they were satisfied with the kills that they saw on screen. Wouldn't the better marketing question going into this season be, how is Rick gonna come back from all this? All of the marketing around the season was built around the first episode, and after that was over, it was kind of like, okay, now what? If we had seen Abraham die in the season 6 finale, market the show around Negan's regime and how our group can possibly defeat him, it would have, at the very least, given people a reason to stick around longer. And they could have opened the episode on Glenn's death and give people an even bigger reason to want to buy into how Rick and the group are going to come back from all this. Sure, you can think that this is a good cliffhanger. I don't, and I never will, because I think how the show was handled during this crucial time ultimately led to the loss of even more viewers. Oh, you're wondering what my thoughts are on the deaths, and I've made you wait a few minutes longer? Yeah, imagine that, but on a scale of several months. And several more minutes from when the episode starts, as if you haven't waited long enough. Now we have to rebuild all the stress of that moment, a moment that was executed to perfection the first time around, so let's just redo that scene, but from different angles. I gotta take a moment to shout out Big Man Abraham, who doesn't ever get the respect he deserves, almost like these two episodes were handled very poorly, I don't know. In retrospect, it's incredibly obvious that he would be Negan's pick. He doesn't cower away from him, he all but vocally volunteered to be this death, and he doesn't get nearly enough love or attention from this death, from this sacrifice. It flips his goodbye scene with Eugene because now it's farewell to Abraham and not Eugene like we thought, and that's honestly very clever writing. R.I.P. Abraham, you left a very big hole in the show when you left, and you're not talked about nearly as much as you should be. Also, what did the Sasha and Abraham romance do exactly? Why was it necessary for him to break up with Rosita and then be with Sasha? Abraham could have went on the exact same journey that he went on, but with Rosita. It's not like either one of these couples was particularly budding with chemistry, so why change it? Oh, because Sasha didn't have a storyline. Let's just have her be the love interest to...
Oh, I don't know. That guy.
So now we know who was killed. Alright, let's move on. Oh, no, wait, Daryl has to make the dumbest decision in the show and hit Negan with the arm that just hours earlier he was shot in the shoulder, so now we get the big death. Glenn's death was a big swing and a miss, not literally, but I don't blame them for doing it. It was what happened in the comics. They wanted to try and be faithful to the source material, and they said that they tried playing around with different storylines if he survived, but it affected too much of the story. I don't know how true that is, but I think that in a way it made so much sense for it to be Glenn's character. The intent was for Glenn's death to be this hugely impactful death that the audience would want to see the downfall of Negan and put us in that place mentally that lusted for revenge, and on paper, I actually don't think that Abraham's death alone would have incited that. I think it had to be a character like Glenn or even Daryl to make us feel a strong enough hatred for Negan. Imagine if it had been Daryl. Would Academy Award-nominated actor Steven Yeun be in a Glenn Rhee TV show instead? And Glenn's death did cause a huge impact on the show, but not the one they were hoping for. While I often make fun of when the show highlights a character in their death episode or the episode right before their death, they didn't do that for Glenn, who is probably the biggest death in the entire show, but his final few episodes weren't really anything special. In his final episodes, he didn't get a very big scene with Maggie, he killed people, which was something he actively avoided doing throughout the entire apocalypse, and went out searching for Daryl just to find him and try to leave to go home. In the season 6 finale, Glenn has like 2 lines. In this episode, he had 1 line, so his last proper episode where he has a lot of screen time is in the episode East, but he doesn't particularly have a lot of lines or scenes in that episode either. Because of this, Glenn doesn't really get a complete character arc. And I hate the argument when people say, this is The Walking Dead, anybody can die at any time. You know a show that also totes that same line? Game of Thrones, yet all the main characters that die in that, at least in the first few seasons, have complete character arcs, and their deaths are for more than just shock value. They actually change the story. The reason why all these deaths in Game of Thrones work is because of how well-paced each episode was. So let's move on to The Walking Dead Season 7's biggest enemy, pacing. Watching this season week to week was an absolute chore. I say this a lot in these videos, but from seasons 4 to 6, every Sunday in my house was like the Super Bowl because there were so many people coming over to watch the episode and talk about it afterwards, and by the end of season 7, there was me, my mom, my dad, and my best friend. From 15 to 20 people every week to 4. This was because most people stopped watching the show because they didn't care and it was too slow. We wanted to see Rick rally the troops and want to fight back, and it's kind of hard to do that when across the first half of the season, Rick is only in half of the episodes. We also get 5 of these 8 episodes that take place with one storyline in one location. We set up the kingdom, we set up the sanctuary, we set up Oceanside, we check in at Alexandria, we check in at the hilltop, and after these 5 episodes, we are barely further along than we were at the end of episode 1. None of these episodes have any particular standout moments other than character introductions. Not to mention the tone of this season is just so wildly all over the place. The first half of season 6 felt urgent and emotional, and the stakes were very high. The second half felt like an impending doom was coming. Our characters were very confident, but the tone made us think that something was going to go wrong very soon. Season 7 has all this setup for so many different things in the first half, and the second half has a bit more cohesion with coming together, but it still suffers from pacing and boomerang storytelling. But there is a good aspect to this season that the other seasons didn't have, and that is, of course, Negan, or should I say Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan. His charisma and performance gives us this character that we love to hate, and sure, I see some of the complaints that he's a big, over-the-top, cartoony villain, but I actually like that aspect. Especially during this rewatch, I found myself really looking forward to his scenes, and then kind of looking at my phone to take all these notes when there were other episodes with storylines I didn't care about. So I'm just going to rapid fire a few of my thoughts on these episodes in the first half of the season. Episode 2, I think Ezekiel and his over-the-top personality with Shiva and leading the kingdom is really great, and Carrie Payton is really great as Ezekiel. We also get Jerry, and who doesn't love Jerry? They also feed pigs walkers to trade to the saviors. Shouldn't this start a whole sickness arc once again at the sanctuary, like what happened at the prison? Episode 3, a lot of really interesting ideas in this episode. I think that Dwight had huge possibilities of becoming a great and fan-favorite character, and I like him in this episode. The idea of a captured Daryl and breaking him down to become one of Negan's men is also really interesting. It would have been absolutely incredible for Daryl to become a double agent and join Negan, and it's honestly really stupid that he didn't. The The Sanctuary is an interesting place, and seeing how Negan runs it and how terrified people are gives you an additional feeling of hopelessness. But in terms of all the one storyline episodes, I actually think that this is probably the best one. Episode 4 proves that things get worse before they get better. This episode is almost more disheartening than the previous episodes, seeing everything that Rick and the Alexandrians have built all being taken over the course of a single afternoon. In a lot of ways, this episode is incredibly effective. Negan is equally charming and terrifying, and Rick is broken beyond repair. Anyone who had an issue with The Ones Who Live and how Rick acted in that show, and how Michonne had to come in and change his mind, how it's out of character for him, just do yourself a favor and rewatch this episode and this season in general. This episode also started Rosita having an actual character arc and presence in this story outside of being a love interest, and I sure hope that that continues. I also think this would have been better had Daryl shown up being part of the Saviors with both Rick and the audience not yet knowing he's undercover. Episode 5. I guess it's cool to check in on Maggie on the hilltop, see her confront Gregory, but I don't particularly care about this Carl and Enid romance, and this is overall a pretty uneventful episode. Episode 6. This was at one point the lowest rated episode of the series, but honestly, I had more fun watching this episode than I did the last one. It's very obvious with the amount of guns that these women have, where the direction of the story is going from here, and again, I think that this could have been combined with like the last 4 episodes for them to all make 2 episodes with all this information and multiple storylines, and the show wouldn't have felt as slow as it is. It's also a famous episode for being Heath's last appearance and the first appearance of the PvP card, both of which we're still waiting for some sort of resolution to, and this episode came out in 2017. Episode 7. This is actually a good episode. Rosita having an actual character arc is making me think differently of her this time around. I think Carl going on a suicide mission to the Sanctuary offers a lot of great moments and offers the full glimpse of the storyline AMC wants us all to forget. Again, I think this sets up a really great dynamic between Negan and Carl, and it's followed through for the next episode, and they say that it follows through in storylines and episodes after that, but it really doesn't. It's also the first bit of humanity that we see out of Negan with how he treats Carl. Episode 8, definitely the second best episode of the season. I had forgotten how great of a character Gregory is. Great in the sense that he's despicable and I hate everything about him, but that also makes for a great character, and people don't think about that one too much. You need hateable characters just as much as you need lovable characters, and Gregory fills that itch more than maybe any other character in the show does. This episode also has all storylines, which is fantastic. It makes the pacing much better and shouldn't be delegated to something only mid-season finales or big episodes have. But The Walking Dead had largely forgotten that at this point. This episode also has the most ridiculous moment in all of The Walking Dead, and that's when Rosita misses her shot and it hits Lucille instead. Maybe this is why I don't like Rosita, because when she gets interesting, she contributes to the worst scene in the series. And I mean that this is the dumbest scene. The odds of this ever happening are insane, and it feels like this scene is out of a cartoon. Also, why would Negan think that somebody made this bullet? Why not that somebody found it? Negan is smart, but he's definitely not smart enough to know the difference between an actual bullet and then one that was recently made. I don't care what you tell me, it seems like something that was convenient for the plot, so they just kind of went with it. But hey, at least at the end of this episode, we see the group come together to finally want to start trying to fight back. We get the emotional reunion between Daryl and Rick, which I'm hoping we'll get to see a similar scene sometime soon, and Daryl giving back the Colt Python to Rick, which is great symbolism, probably one of the best scenes in the series. So that marks the halfway point of the season. Let's go over what happened, shall we? Glenn and Abraham die. Carol and Morgan learn about the kingdom. Daryl is a prisoner. Tara learns about Oceanside. Alexandria gets robbed. Maggie is sad. Carl and Rosita want to fight back against Negan, though they both fail. Daryl escapes. Negan feeds Carl spaghetti. The group wants to fight back. That's it. And that doesn't sound like enough to fill half a season. In fact, that sounds like the synopsis for like an episode or two of the show. Am I exaggerating to make a point right now? Yes, I am, but even if I went through a very detailed point-by-point progression of the story, it would be far less than anything that happened in any half season before this. This half of the season really only set up what we already knew was going to happen, the group finding the will to fight back. But now that we're all at this point, it's time for a break. Now, I'm not saying that this is a badly written season. I actually think that splitting up the group into different communities and homes is really interesting and allows us to see the broader approach of the world. I think that the story and the events that transpire lead to a pretty natural reaction from everybody to gather that courage and want to fight back. But there's also a lot of scenes that could have been cut out and the story would remain the same. Did we really need to see multiple different scenes of Daryl getting tortured to see the point? Did we need an entire episode about Negan stopping by Alexandria to take their stuff? Multiple scenes of Carol saying that she's done fighting and wants to be left alone? There is so much excess fat in these episodes that, if they were slimmed down and combined, could have made for some really great episodes of television. If some of the fat of the scenes was trimmed down and we get this whole reunion, say, at the end of episode 5, go into the groups all meeting and their first fight with the Saviors be the mid-season finale, the second half covering the start of All Out